Hi, readers. Today in Reading to Learn, we are going to be talking about looking for underlying ideas in true stories or things that aren't specifically said, but that you can learn from true stories. When you read a biography, it's important to figure out what is it that makes the person important enough to have a book written about them, right? So you can figure out the through line that holds the story together. They tend to tell us how a person became famous. And those tales are held together because they have a series of events or thoughts or insights that lead up to what made the person famous. But if you just were to say those things one at a time, it would be kind of boring, right? I mean, it would be true, but it would be boring. So it's sort of like if I just said what we did in class, or when you tell your parents, first I did this, then I did that, then I did that, then I did that. It's boring, right? So it's important that all of these things that are true are connected in an entertaining way, which is what makes it narrative nonfiction or makes a biography interesting. So today I'm going to teach you that sometimes the main idea, the author doesn't tell you what the main idea is in a book. For it to be a well-written story, there's definitely a main idea or a reason to tell the story. So sometimes you have to figure it out yourself. And the way that you can do that is that you can look for the various life lessons that your character is learning. You could look for the challenges. You can find a time in the story when a character makes a really big decision or choice, and then figure out what happened or how that character learned something from that choice. And then the other thing is that just like when you guys were writing your stories, it often an author will just focus on the heart of the story because that's where the big lesson is. So I'm going to remind you that we just finished reading Charles Darwin's Around the World Adventure, right? In this little section, Charles tried to be a doctor like his father, but the sight of blood made him queasy, so he studied to become a clergyman. While attending Cambridge University, he took long walks with his professors exploring the countryside. It was his favorite part of school. After graduation, Charles's professor of botany wrote a letter recommending him to be the naturalist aboard the HMS Beagle. The ship's mission was to take map measurements of South America. Charles would be able to explore new places all around the world. He was thrilled. His father thought it was a wild scheme, but he finally let Charles go. In that in this story, that was a big choice that Charles made, and it changed his life. Remember? And when he was on the Beagle, he discovered a whole new interest, and he followed that interest for the rest of his life. And if you think about it, this book is just one small part of his life. It was 5 years, but the book really focuses in on just a very small part of his life. And then he went on to make some great discoveries. So it didn't tell you that, it didn't say, hey, kids, the main idea is that Charles went on this ship and he made all these great discoveries that changed the way we think about the world. No, but you figured it out because you were paying attention to what the big choices were that he made. So when you're reading narrative nonfiction, you can read it as a story. We really enjoyed that book, right? And what are the subject's traits? What are their motivations? What do they need? And then what are the struggles? He didn't like blood. He didn't want to be a doctor like his dad, right? What is the subject known for? Well, he's known for studying living things, and then you could read it as information. You could do both at the same time. What can you learn about in this book? And what are the main ideas and supporting points that you can get from them? So here's a bunch of jots that some kids made about Martin Luther King. So they all read a book about Martin Luther King, and each came up with different things that they learned. This one says that he learned that you have to use your brain for good things. This one's actually about Albert Einstein because he regretted making the atomic bomb. And yet, all he wanted to do was stop the war when he did that. These three are about Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King taught me to speak up if something's wrong. That's a really important lesson this kid took from reading a book about Martin Luther King. This one learned that you shouldn't give up. This one is about understanding that segregation is not a great thing, right? So all of these kids took some learning from their books that they read. And that's what I'm hoping that you'll do today. Today's assignment is to try to find a narrative nonfiction book to read. Jot down things that you learned, just like those kids did, and then write those things that you learned on your Padlet. If you're wondering how do you find a narrative nonfiction book, there's a pretty easy way that you can do it. You just search narrative nonfiction in Epic or in Raz Kids, and it pulls up a whole bunch of narrative nonfiction books. That's how I found the Charles Darwin book in Epic. And narrative nonfiction can be about people, but it also can be about places or events or things. So there's a wide range of things that you could read about today. So hopefully you'll find something like that. I really encourage you to jot down some of the things that you're learning as you're going, and then put them into our class Padlet and read over your friends' jots to see what they're learning. Remember to read for about 30 minutes if you can, and enjoy today's reading lesson.